Welcome to Day 3 at CEDIA Expo 2019. I'm Leanne Wood, part of the Public Relations and Social Media team for the show, and your MC for the Smart Stage powered by CE Pro. So I'm thinking that a lot of people had a really fun time last night. I know my voice is a little rough today, like everyone's. Kicking off Day 3 programming is simPro on a topic that we all need to know about because I think everyone in business has pondered this question. Should you adopt cloud-based software for your business? Moderated by Glen Nott, Chief Content Officer of CE Pro, this panel will discuss the common concerns that professionals have and some tips to integrate the software successfully. Jason, Glenn, and Tim, please join me on the stage for your introductions and your panel discussion.
Thank you, Leanne. And I think I'm suffering from the same little gravelly voice from a long 3 days, but hopefully everybody I won't be coughing and sneezing and all those sorts of things. Welcome everybody out there in Facebook land. We're excited you could join us. Thank you, everybody here in the audience. Leanne kind of set the stage there. The industry has been plagued for a long time with a lot of integrators. This is a cottage industry where integrators start out as sole entrepreneurs, one-man shops, sole proprietors, and they really use the shoebox accounting method and the shoebox operation method. And a lot of them start out with no software. And then they graduate and they grow, as almost all these businesses do, and they realize and they recognize the need that they need to have software. But what happens in many cases is integrators end up buying single-purpose pieces of software. So they buy one-off solutions for whatever the need may be at the time. And what we're seeing is that in many cases, a lot of those single-purpose pieces of software don't communicate with each other well. And so the rise of the end-to-end solution, software solution, which previously has been around for a few years, but it's been expensive and in many cases requires an integrator to really adapt their business model to the software. But now we see the advent of cloud-based solutions that are coming into the market, and they're really working with the integrator's business model. And in some cases, being brutally honest, they should change some of their business processes to adapt to the software. Maybe they're doing something that they can be enlightened by the software. But in most cases, these softwares really work with how the business works. So that's what we're here to talk about today is the advent of the end-to-end cloud-based solutions and how they can help your custom integration business. So I'm excited to be joined with, I think I've waited my whole life to be able to say, welcome Mr. Nott. So Glen Nott with Glen Nott, President of simPro US. Glenn, thanks for joining me today. Tell us a little bit about simPro.
Well, first of all, I got to throw one back at you. Thank you, Mr. Nott. Thanks for the introduction, Jason. It's great to be here, and just to put our journey here in the US into perspective a little bit for everyone watching and listening here this morning. We're now just over 2 years into our history here in the US of having a real footprint here in this country. simPro was born and developed about 17 or 18 years ago out of Australia, and it was developed by an electrician who was struggling with some of those business processes and trying to create more efficiencies in his business at the time, and happened to hook up with a buddy of his who was a developer, who was a coder, and said, hey, can you just build me some software and help educate him about his business? And sure enough, a couple of years after that, some of that founder's mates, his buddies started to see what he was doing. Why is your business starting to do so well? And he said, well, I've developed some of this software. Do you mind if I have a look at it and maybe I can try it? And it just took off from there. So, fast forward 17 or 18 years, we've now got over 100,000 users using our end-to-end software in about 30 odd different countries. As I said, we're relatively new to the US. Been here ourselves for a couple of years now, but making a lot of progress. And Tim, who's just to my left, was actually one of our early customers in the US. Even before we came here, took a leap of faith with us when we were back in Australia. And obviously Tim will share some of that success and story with you. But yeah, we're thriving in the business here, Jason, and we bring on 20, 25 new customers every single month, not just in the Pro AV industry, but also in plumbing, electrical, security, fire. Basically, what makes our software relevant to those kind of verticals and industries are very common workflows.
Yeah, so you mentioned, you kind of touched on it before I introduce Tim and get kind of that rubber meets the road perspective. What are some of the industries you have been in with the software successfully previously? Very like industries to the custom installation industry.
Yeah, as I said, Jason, we came out of the electrical industry, but plumbing, electrical, HVAC, security and fire, and obviously Pro AV are the primary ones. But geez, we have customers, who install and service and maintain garage doors. And that's typically not a key vertical for us. But when you think about their workflows, they're very common to those other verticals that I mentioned. So that's the key for us. It's the workflows, not necessarily the industry or the vertical itself.
Great, Glenn. All right. Also with us is Tim Orr. Tim, welcome. Tim is with Bluewave Communications in Miramar, Florida. Tim, tell us a little bit about Bluewave.
So thank you for having me here. I'm very honored to be part of the panel, so I appreciate you inviting me to be here and share my story. So Bluewave, we started out as a structured cabling contractor, and over the course of the last 10 or so years, we kind of morphed into something a little bit different, just to get into more audiovisual and then security and distributed antenna systems and wireless and things like that. So we're very heavy on the service side, on the customer side, so we have a lot of technicians out in the field, a lot of trucks. So as we started to grow, we had to hire more people and get more processes in place, and as a result of that, we had a lot of separate systems that we had to incorporate to tackle this particular problem or one issue or another. So simPro was one of those things that we looked at and really had an exhaustive kind of evaluation on different software packages, and simPro kind of checked a lot of the boxes and where that fit. And so we're very happy with how things have worked so far. We adopted the system in 2014, as Glenn mentioned before. You hadn't had a presence here in the States, so we did kind of take a leap of faith. But a lot of what you mentioned earlier was it was created by an electrical contractor, so we knew that some of the pain points that we had were shared by him, and we knew that some of the things that we were going through, he was going through as part of his business, and that some of those issues that he was having, we would have as well, and the software would handle a lot of those things.
Great, yeah, we'll dig into see even more details of how it fit your business model. But Glenn, let me turn back to you. I kind of touched on it on the intro. Tell us a little bit about the value and the efficiencies gained of having an end-to-end solution versus going out and purchasing single-purpose pieces of software.
Yeah, and maybe just to define, the difference between the two, Jason, as well, because that single-purpose software, and even this week being at a convention like this, integrators will come across multiple companies at multiple booths and stands that do very niche parts of those workflows very well. And so as an example, I was at another trade show a couple of months ago and I came across a company who does scheduling software for the plumbing industry. They do it very, very well. Or they may do, inventory management, and they do that very, very well. But as we know, these businesses have multiple workflows within their particular organization. So that may be the initial pain point, scheduling, managing inventory, or whatever the case may be. But soon enough, you find that, hey, there's a whole bunch of other elements of my business that need assistance with as well. So that single point of entry versus the whole, what we refer to as the end-to-end management of that, looks at the entire workflow process. So all of those elements is what simPro concentrates on. And obviously, one of the biggest challenges is just having that single point of entry with a piece of software is if you buy from this vendor or that vendor, they typically don't talk to one another.
Really quickly, can you go through kind of that beginning to end of all the processes that the software can handle? You talked about scheduling, proposals, labor management, et cetera. What are kind of the key, maybe there's some Uber categories you can describe?
Yeah, well, I guess if you just think about, where does it all start? It starts with a customer management system, a CRM system. Now, we would not say that simPro is a full-on CRM system like a Salesforce, but we have a very efficient element of customer service management. And when you think about what you need from a CRM, simPro is able to help there. So you think about, again, from the very start of that workflow through to the end of it, it starts with a CRM system identifying an opportunity and a customer, through to creating jobs, through to identifying who a customer is, scheduling technicians, and right through to inventory management, and right up to the point where you're going to get paid. And I think the really key element of what we do too, Jason, is having that software and that system in place for people in the office to be able to schedule and manage that process, but just as importantly is to be connected to your techs in the field. And so we have a mobile application that is in real time. Obviously, we're in the cloud, we're a SaaS company, so all of this happens at a moment's notice in real time.
From the analysis you've done of all the users of the software, what are the biggest areas that you find that users struggle? Labor management, scheduling, what is it? What's the biggest pain point?
I wish I could just name one. I will pick one, but there are, and it depends on the organisation. So I couldn't say, for example, in the Pro AV industry, there's a common element. Because we find that, and I guess we can talk about this as we go here, but you may be dealing with an organisation right next door to one another in the same industry, but their pain points are slightly different. But if I just took inventory management as an example, particularly in an industry like this where inventory is such a high cost, you start being unable to have visibility and being able to track that inventory. It's a very costly expense to the business. I was talking with one of our customers recently, and they were able to reduce their loss of stock, their loss of industry, down from about 10% to about 2%. And I said, well, is that significant? What's that worth to you? And it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's target in on kind of the title of today's seminar, which is about the myths of cloud-based software. What are the biggest misconceptions that you find that integrators have about selecting their software?
I think the biggest one for me that I hear constantly is that this will be easy and it'll be the panacea. If I introduce software, it'll solve all my problems and it'll be happy days and away we go. It's not like that. First time customers and organizations, and I'm sure Tim will talk about this in a little bit more detail, there is a lot of work involved. You're going from a process, and whether it be a paper-based system or even using other software, and all of a sudden you're transferring it over to a single source. And you're having to give up some of those habits that you've developed over a period of time. You're having to train your organization and your techs on how to use it. And you're being challenged along the way. And again, Tim will probably refer to this, but we will challenge you, our implementation consultants, when they go on site to onboard our customers. They will challenge the way in which organizations have been, running their business for the better.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's not definitely a flip a switch and it's on and up and running. There's a lot of planning involved that before you actually go live with it. I think when we implemented it, when we made the decision to move forward, we had the implementation team come in and we had some training and we identified a lot of the workflows, and there was we probably did, I want to say, up to about 3 months worth of planning that led up to turning the switch on and going from there. And we're still modifying our workflows now to fit more with how the system is being upgraded and changes and things like that. So it's definitely not a flip a switch and it's on. There's a lot of time and effort that's put into it.
Following up on that question, what was your biggest pain point? Was it the technician management, the inventory? What was the biggest pain point where you said we've got to have a better software solution?
Yeah, a lot of it was managing the technicians' timesheets, right? A lot of it was inventory management, as Glenn pointed out. We had issues with double entry for doing quotes. We did a lot on Excel. Excel wasn't able to get imported into the system that we had. So, you have to look at what issues do you have and how do you want to solve it, and does the system do it? If you're unable to identify what your biggest pain points are, then you're going to have a difficulty trying to figure out how to change your workflows. So our biggest problems were the technicians' timesheets. A lot was manual, inventory management, and then the quoting feature.
Let's talk about the cloud element for a second. What does the cloud element bring to a software solution? Some of the things I hear from integrators is they fear the slowness, speed, but they're getting constant updates and other things. Talk about the affordability element. What are some of the advantages and misconceptions that people might have specifically about cloud-based software?
Yeah, and probably a couple of points there, Jason. I guess one of the biggest misconceptions is, and the question that we get asked quite often is, is my data secure? Is it safe? And it absolutely is, and it's interesting because, all of us use cloud-based software in our daily lives, and we probably just aren't aware of it. Yeah, so our personal data, our business data is being used in the cloud every day anyway. But that data is 100% our customers. We don't own it. No other third party owns it. It's our customers' data. But the efficiencies, back to your point about using a cloud-based software application, and I see this every single day, and I'm sure Tim will attest to this. Tim can go off on holidays with his wife and his family and still remain connected to his business. He can be anywhere he likes, anywhere in the world, as long as he has an internet connection, and be able to access and control and have visibility into his business via a mobile phone.
And then the latency issue or the speed issue, I try to hear some integrators concerned about, I got to wait for the cloud. Is that really an issue these days anymore?
Look, again, it's like anything. We all get frustrated if we don't get, access to an app within a couple of seconds because of slow Wi-Fi or whatever the case may be. So we obviously our software is as good or as fast as what internet speed is. But what immediately comes to mind on that one, particularly in some of these sorts of trade industries and verticals, Jason, is when perhaps the technician's in a roof or in a basement or whatever the case may be, and they don't have Wi-Fi or internet access. The real plus about that, as soon as they come out of that environment and they get connected again, all of the data that they've perhaps transferred becomes live again.
Yeah, I can tell you from an integrator standpoint, having access outside of the office is paramount. That's key. Being able to see and look, and have somebody ask you a question, calls you up, asks you a question, you're able to look at it on your phone. I can log in, I can make a change, I can do whatever I need to do in the system and don't have to be in the office. That's critical.
All right, let's put you on the spot here, Tim.
Sure.
Now that you've had simPro for years, give us that, share with everybody exactly what it's meant to your company from either a metric level, efficiency, reduced man hours, less lost inventory, more increased billing hours. What are some of the key metrics and maybe that bottom line profitability that the software has brought to your business?
Well, straight off, I can tell you just the time frame that it takes for us to create a quote and turn it into a job in the system created tremendous efficiencies for us. Before we had to enter a lot of information into a spreadsheet, and then that would have to be entered again, double entered into the system that we were using. The system that we were using wasn't very effective at managing inventory, so we had to figure out another paper method to track that. The techs were writing, information down. A lot of it was incorrect. You couldn't read it. It took a lot of time to figure out what material was being used on the job, and then somebody had to decipher that. A lot of it was reading hieroglyphics, trying to figure out what was on this work order. So the time it took from the quoting standpoint to turn into a job, issuing materials, I can tell you now we created tremendous efficiencies. I don't know, couldn't really quantify it right now, but just in freeing up my time from overlooking and looking at things, and my operations manager's time was tremendous. It allowed us to look at other things and allowed us to work on the business, not in the business. right?
I think that's one of the things I hear pretty consistently is, it's tough to put that bottom line number on it, but that time that you previously might have been using managing, you're now out selling, or you're now out, finding a new job or working on another project that previously you had delayed the man hours on. So it's kind of almost like an increased revenue. It sounds odd to say, increased revenue, not necessarily bottom line savings that can come out of a piece of software like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to let you know, from the time that we implemented the software in 2014 to now, we've doubled our revenue, right? We've doubled our revenue. I can't say that it's directly attributed to simPro, obviously, but a lot of the things that we were able to do as a result of implementing simPro, I think was a major contributing factor, right? Was the salespeople, our estimators didn't have to spend so much time. It freed them up to create more quotes and more jobs and win more customers over.
And Jason, just further to something that Tim touched on, just in terms of that human element, what software does do, and again, this comes back to the hidden benefits that aren't necessarily obvious on day one, is it does remove that human error that exists in a lot of businesses today. A wrong calculation, a piece of paper that's not placed where it should have been, et cetera, et cetera. So you take that out of the equation.
Yeah, I think it does solve that problem, but it creates other problems, right? Other problems that just have to get solved. So it doesn't eliminate human error. It just makes it easier to fix, right? So training your techs on how to input the information, training people how to do it, and continually training people on the software and changes that are made and things, and creating more efficiencies. Training ongoing is key to eliminate a lot of the data entry mistakes that happen. But simPro definitely helped us in that regard, because once you identify a problem, you make a change and it's global, versus having a piece of paper and then there's no way of eliminating that mistake again, right?
And think of all the trees you save by not having to print all those pieces of paper. All right, do we have any questions from the audience? We're up here against our timeline. If we don't, where is simPro here on the show at CEDIA? Do you know the booth?
Absolutely, I do. We're at booth 333. We have our team there. They've been here all week. Had a great engagement with many organisations. But yeah, come and see us.
All right, Glen Nott, this is the double Nott session. I was waiting to say that line. Tim Orr, thank you very much. Round of applause. Great conversation today.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.